Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join today's webinar on how to use Data Inbox. My name is Jeff Hamlin, and I'm the Director of Learning and Development, and we'll go ahead and get started with today's content. So before I get started on showing you what Data Inbox is and how to use it, I first want to cover what our mission is at the Climate Corporation. And our mission is to help all the world's farmers sustainably increase their productivity with digital tools. And I want to concentrate here for a moment on this phrase, with digital tools, because that highlights the core belief and assumption about how we view the future of agriculture. And I want to share that with you because what we talk about is, and when we talk about what our products do, I think it's also important to understand why we are building what we're building here today. So, our core belief is that the next breakthrough in agriculture will not be driven by genetics or equipment, but rather through utilizing data to optimize decision making. And this really guides everything that we're working on here at the Climate Corporation. If you think about the genetic capability of this seed, as you all know, the record yields achieved for corn are in excess of 500 bushels an acre. But the U.S. average yield is still around 170 bushels an acre. So this opportunity gap tells us that maximizing profitability is not fundamentally a problem of genetic potential. Likewise, if we think about the current state of equipment and mechanization in agriculture, we know that today's modern planters can plant hundreds of acres a day at speeds up to 10 miles an hour, while precisely spacing every seed on every row and optimizing downforce automatically. Now, I'm certain that equipment will continue to improve and more farmers will continue to adopt the technology that already exists today. But again, we here at the Climate Corporation don't believe that closing the yield opportunity gap will come primarily from bigger or faster equipment, but rather it will come from smarter instruction sets that today's best equipment can already utilize. We think that the next breakthroughs in agriculture will be made by optimizing every management decision around each seed that we plant to achieve optimal profit. So that said, what we want to talk about today with Data on Inbox is how we can get all our data in one place to start allowing us to make these decisions and make data-driven decisions on the farm. So the key we're talking about is getting all our data into a single place, and Data Inbox plays a key role in that. There's a number of different ways that we can get our data into the climate system. We can do it either through connected cabs, where we are collecting data in real time as we pass through the field. We can do it through our API partners, where other third-party software systems are able to pass data into the FieldView platform automatically. And we can also move data by uploading it manually from a data stick that comes out of a monitor, from another third-party software system that may be holding some of our historical data. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is this data upload function and how we can take the data that is currently sitting on our shelves, sitting in binders, sitting in thumb drives, sitting in various software systems around the farm, and get it into the Climate FieldView platform so that we have it with us everywhere we go. We can start to use it in data analysis and really make that data actionable and unlock the power that has been sitting on our shelves for the last many years. So before we get into how it works, I'm going to talk a little bit about the requirements that we have in order to actually upload data into the system. And I'll start with soil data, though some of these characteristics are going to apply to any sort of data we want to upload. But if we're uploading soil data, gridded soil sample into the Data Inbox so that we can use it in the Climate FieldView platform, there's a couple requirements. First of all, the soil samples as of today, here in February of 2017, they need to come out of either SMS, SST, or map shots in a shapefile format. Those are the formats that we can read. The other option is they could be gridded soil samples coming from the Solem Soil Labs in central Iowa, and that must be in their MODIS format. So if you have soil data in any of those listed formats, we can import it into Climate, display it there, and start to use it in our data analysis. Other forms of data are not going to be currently able to be imported, though we're always looking at adding to that functionality. We're always trying to add other systems and other file formats so that we can import pretty much whatever data you may have. Now those gridded soil samples, they need to be georeferenced, so they will need to have a latitude and a longitude value associated with them. They will need to have a sampling date populated in the file as to when the samples were taken. And finally, if there's no field boundaries in your climate.com account for the soil data that you are trying to import, you will need to load those shapefiles that include the field boundaries first. Otherwise, the soil data won't load correctly. So don't load soil data until you've loaded field boundaries. And we will show you how all that works here in a minute when we get into the live product. Now, a couple other general notices. For best loading practices, anytime you're uploading data into Data Inbox, you should be using the Google Chrome browser. So if you are using Internet Explorer or Firefox or Safari or some other browser to access the internet, we highly recommend that you go and download Google Chrome and use it anytime that you are interacting with the climate application. It just does a number of things quite a bit better and faster than some of the other browsers out there. Also, when you are loading data into the Data Inbox, this has to be done on a laptop or a desktop computer. And you also have to have a pretty solid internet connection. Basically, we're uploading files that in some cases may be fairly large, so we're going to want to have a solid internet connection to allow that file transfer to happen. And as of today, all of this Data Inbox uploading of data, you can't do it over an iPad. It has to be done via a laptop or a desktop computer. You can't do it via the mobile app, essentially. And the last point, anytime we're importing data files, they must be zipped. So if you take a folder off of your thumb drive that was plugged into your John Deere monitor and you want to import it into Climate, you're going to take it to your computer first. You're going to take that folder off the thumb drive, and then you're going to zip it. So you'll right-click on it, and there's some choices in there, either add to archive or compress or zip. Depending on what system you're on, it may say different things. But you need to compress or zip that folder so it ends in .zip. That's the only way that you can use the Data Inbox. It needs to be in that form to be imported. When we're talking about planting and harvest data that we want to move into Data Inbox, we want, again, for you to be able to import any planting or harvest data that you have for your farm to the system, so you can use the FieldView platform as your entire system of record, where you can carry every bit of information that you've ever collected on the farm around with you at all times, on your phone, on your iPad, whatever device you have, you can always have all your data with you. Now, there's a lot of different file formats out there, and we are working on building the translations of all those file formats so that you can take it out of wherever it exists today and have it show up accurately in our system. But as of today, we've done some translations, but obviously not every system in the market today. So if you have data in any of the formats listed on this screen, John Deere 2600 or 2630 raw monitor files, Case IH Pro 600 or Pro 700 raw monitor files, Ag Leader Integra raw monitor files, Apex either shape files or raw files, SMS exported raw files, or we just recently added compatibility with John Deere Operations Center shapefiles. If your planting or harvest data is in any of these formats, you can, as of today, very easily take that data out of the system that it's in today and move it into the Climate FieldView platform for viewing, analysis, and all the other things that we can do on our side of the platform. Additional compatibility is still to come here. We're always working on additional translations, and so we expect this list to expand significantly here in even the near future. So you can always check back with our support team to see if the data that you are trying to move is currently compatible and able to be imported into the FieldView platform. Now I'm going to get into the demo in a minute, but one thing that I mentioned we're always trying to add additional systems, compatible systems to our list, and these are some of the ones that we're looking at right now. So if you had historical planting or harvest data or spray data or anything that is in one of these systems, Ag Leader Versa, Ag Leader In Command 800 or 1200, Ag Leader Insight, Kinsey Vision, New Holland IntelliView, Raven, or Trimble. Those are systems that we want to be compatible with here sooner rather than later, and we're doing as much testing as we can to make sure that data imported from those systems will display and and work properly. So if you have data from any of those systems that you would be willing to share with us for testing, we would love to take a look at it and hopefully get us closer to being able to use these systems. So I'll put up the support phone number here at the end, and certainly give us a call. Let us know if you have data you'd like to share. Now with that said, I want to go ahead and get into a data inbox upload demonstration. I want to show you how this works to upload data into the system, how you can put it in on your computer, and then visualize it on either your iPad or your phone. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my browser here, my Google Chrome browser, and I'm going to look at my Climate account. So here I've created a blank account. This is an account that I just created today. It has no fields in it, no field boundaries, and as I mentioned earlier, one thing we can't do is import soil data until we have field boundaries in the system. So when I'm talking about data inbox and starting from scratch, the first thing I always want to do is import my field boundaries. So I'm going to go over here, and when we want to use data inbox, it's all in this import button near the top of the screen. So I'm going to click on import. It'll take me to the data inbox, and what I'll have the option of doing here is there's an upload file button on the right hand side. So I'll click upload file. It'll let me browse my computer. I'm going to find the files that I'm looking for. Where are they? I put a bunch of files on here. Here they are. It's Jefferson Center data files. And as you can see, I have yield files in here. I have planting files. I have soil sample files. I have boundary files. A number of different things that I can import here. But I want to start with boundary. So I'm going to go ahead and click on boundary. And as you can see, it is a zip file already because I've gone ahead and zipped the data that came with this out of the John Deere monitor here. So I'm going to take the boundary file, click on it, and just click open. And what the system will do is it'll prepare the file for upload, it will upload it, it will process it, and in this case, because I just have one field of data, it goes pretty quickly. I now can see my field boundary that I've imported. It brings in the field name that was associated with that field. It tells me I've got default clients and farms, so I can type in my client farm field data here. Basically, everything is here for me to review. And the way the systems works is that when I click to import a file, it displays it on the screen here in sort of a quarantine area where the system says, hey, here is a file that I want to import, or you wanted to import. Check it out before you go ahead and import it and make sure that everything looks right. And so I review it on the screen. I say, yeah, that's what I was hoping was in that file. That looks right. I can put a check mark here to say, let's go ahead and import it. And I will go ahead and click the import button. And it'll take a second, then it'll say field assignment is complete. And there is nothing left in my quarantine area here. Now I have imported the file that was being displayed, and so there's nothing left to review here. So that's how data inbox works. It is pretty simple. You just take the files from a compatible system, upload them, review to make sure that it's what you were expecting, and then import. And with that, you will have data showing up in the climate system. So let's go ahead and upload a couple more things while I'm here. I'm going to go ahead and upload, now that my field boundaries in there, let me upload my soil sample data. So I'll click on the 2016 soil sample, my most recent one. Again, it's a zip file. I'll click open. It will go ahead and process that file. And again, because it's only one field here, it'll go pretty quickly and it'll say it's been successfully processed. Now at this point, as you can see, it's saying there's nothing to import on my quarantine screen, but that is because I'm still on the Fields tab up here. What I just imported was soil data, so I have to go over to the soil tests where I see this number 1, meaning that there's one field of soil test data waiting for me in quarantine, and I click on that, and it says, okay, now here's what it tried to import. It's 2016 data, it came from an upload, it's a soil test, and it overlaps with the Jefferson Center field boundary that I had just recently imported. So it's going to stick this data inside of Jefferson Center. And is that what I want to do? Yes, all that looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and check the boxes and go ahead and click import. And with that, I will have soil test data in my system. Now, as you can see, it says that the soil test data was imported, and your soil data should be ready for you to view in around 30 minutes. So it can take some time for all this data, once you import it, for it to process and actually show up on your iPad and on your phone for that data to transfer across. So just give it a little bit of time before you go look for it on your iPad or your phone. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and import a couple more things just to show you the full gamut of what we can do here. Let's import some planting data. I planted this field in 2016, so let's go ahead and import that. I'll open that up. Just going to prepare this. Now this one takes a little bit longer. As you can see, it says that it's uploading the file and it's counting up from 0% to 100%. And that's just because planting files have, depending on what you're planting with, how you collected that planting data, they can have quite a few layers of data. And in this case, this is a field that was planted by one of our agronomists over in Indiana. And he plants with a Precision Planting 2020 seed sense monitor on his planter. And so with that, he gets a number of different data layers, from the hybrid that's being planted, to the population that he's planting, to field elevation, to machine speed, singulation, spacing, downforce. There's a number of different data layers, so it's not just trying to import a single variable here. It's importing 8, 10 different variables that will all be visible as different data layers in my iPad or on my phone once I get this data into the system. So planting files may take a little bit longer depending on how many data layers you have. So now that it has successfully processed, I can, again, there's nothing showing up in my quarantine right now because I'm on the soil test tab, but I can go over to the quarantine area for the planting files, take a look at what was just imported, review it, and make sure that it all looks right. And what you'll see when you import planting data is that you'll see sort of the same shape come in several times, and it won't always be the full field. Because these planting files are fairly large, they get split up into several sections that, if you combined them, would form the full field shape. And then you'll also get the same part of the field listed several times, and that's because of the various data layers that exist in some of this planting data. It gets combined into several different files that you'll see on the screen. But as long as the client field farm names are correct and the field assignment is correct, this data is associated with Jefferson Center, and the system is trying to put it into the Jefferson Center field, then all that looks good. We can go ahead and import this data. So I'll go ahead and check that I want to import everything on the screen and click import. Again, it'll just take a second to push this data into the system, and it now says that field assignment is complete and there's nothing left in quarantine. Again, it may take a few minutes for it to end up showing up on my iPad and on my phone, but the data has now been pushed and is being processed. The last part that I want to upload here, just to complete the picture here, is harvest data. So I'm going to try and upload, I think I've got some harvest data in here. Yeah, here's yield data from 2013 to 2016 for this field. So here I've got it all in one file for several different years. I'll go ahead and click open. It'll start prepping that file and uploading it. Not quite as many layers in most harvest files. Usually you'll just have combine speed, grain moisture, yield, obviously, and maybe combine elevation. So you'll just have 3 or 4 different layers in here. It should process a little bit faster than the planting data, though in this case I do have 2013, 14, 15, and 16 all together in this one file, so I'm importing 4 years of that yield data. But this should take another minute or so, and once that's done, it'll be just like the other 3 variables. I'll have data showing up in the harvest section at the top of the page that'll be in quarantine for me to review. So I'll go ahead and click on harvest now. It says there's 11 files. You can see all the different pieces that are here. I'll review those. You know, are they all going into Jefferson Center? Do they all look right? I can see that the season, some of it's 13, some of it's 15, some of it's 14, and some of it's 16. So I've got a number of different years represented here. But everything looks right to me, so I'm going to check this box, select all, and click import. With that done, I will now have a complete data set for this Jefferson Center field. I've got my field boundary in the system, I've got my soil sample data, got my planting data, and I have my harvest data. And that's really how we get to the full set of data in our data inbox that we're going to be able to use. So I'll hit dismiss here, I'll hit close, and if I go back to now my online account on climate.com, I can see that I have this Jefferson Center field. Now you can't see a lot of the data in the in the online, the www.climate.com part of your account. Most of your data viewing happens in your iPad or on your phone or your mobile device in the Climate mobile app. So I'm going to show you what it looks like there. But first, let's do that. Let me see if I can switch over to my iPad. And let me just get this working here. Okay, so let's pull up my iPad now. And you should be able to see my iPad. And what you can see is I can go down here and I can look at the Jefferson Center field. So if I go to Jefferson Center, I can look at the field. And what's the goal? What was the whole purpose of moving this data into the data inbox? Well, the goal is that now, wherever I go, as long as I have my phone or my iPad with me, and it can be an Android phone or an iPhone, you can always pull up all your data on demand. And that data that has been living for years on your desk or on your shelf, in binders and in thumb drives and on your computer, we're now unlocking the power of that data so that wherever you are, you can always pull up and remember what you did on a particular field in a different year, and what the yields were, and what hybrids were planted in that field. So for example, I can come in here and say, you know what did we do last year in this field? Let's look at the planting data, and let's look at the hybrids we planted here. And my system will pull up a map of what I did here. And I can see that I planted this one variety, and I planted it with a split planter. Some of it had quick roots on it, some of it didn't. So a couple different treatments here, but I can remember what I did very easily on that field. Or maybe I want to look at my harvest map. And so if I flip over to harvest and look at my yield map, I can remember where my yields were that year and how that worked. And in addition to viewing the data, there's also a ton of analysis tools built into the system that allow you to quickly understand how performance worked for different hybrids, for different soil types. But that's a subject for another webinar that you can certainly sign up for if you want to learn how to use the analysis tools in the Climate platform. What else can we, another thing, let's say I want to go in here and say, well, what happened in 2014 in this field? What were the yields? I can go back to 2014 and very quickly pull up my soybean yield for this field. Or I can pull up my, maybe I want to look at my yield map for 2013, see if that's in here. Yeah, so we've got a 13 yield map in here. Or maybe I want to look at my latest soil sample. So I can come in here and for the field, I can look at my base layers and look at those soil tests and look at where my pHs are, what my organic matter is, what my CEC is for either the 2016 year or I had soil samples from 2014 in here as well. The power of this system and the data inbox is it allows you to make all your data available to you wherever you go. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And it's step one in allowing our data to work for us and allow us to make data-driven decisions in the field because we have all our data in one place that's easily accessible wherever we go. Okay, so that's what we're going to get. Just a couple more things to cover here. There's a couple things you might see in terms of warnings when you are using the system. So if you're importing data and you see any of these orange bars over your data, that's a sign that you want to pay attention before importing it. So you may get a note that says, hey, your yield file that you're trying to import overlaps with the west field by 37%, the old pasture by less than 1%. Please confirm the field assignment before importing. So what this is doing is it's saying that, hey, the data, the shape of the data that you're trying to import, it doesn't fit entirely within one of the field boundaries that exists in your system. It mostly overlaps with Westfield, so I think that is where you want to put the data, but just confirm that for me. That's what the system is telling you to do. So you'll look at the field that's coming in, you'll say, yeah, I do want to in fact put that in Westfield. And this happens a lot because we may have fields next to each other where as we're planting, technically the last row of the planter goes over the GPS boundary and into the field next door. And so when we import that planting data, it's it's mostly in one field, but it does overlap a little bit with the field next door. We just want to make sure that when we're importing data, we're putting it within the proper field boundary. And so that's what these warnings are about. Just take a look at them. If you see any of these orange bars on any of your imported files, take a look at it. see if it makes sense, make sure the data is going into the field that you intend it to go into before importing. And if you have any questions about what the warning is telling you, just please contact our support team and they'll be happy to help. The other warning sign you might see is something that says, hey, duplicate file. This file has already been added to your account, and importing duplicate data can result in inaccurate reports and planting maps. This is something you definitely want to pay attention to, and you might get these red bars on the data that says, hey, Jefferson Center already contains planting data for this season and crop, and importing duplicate data can impact your reports and cause problems. This is something you almost never want to do. So you may, if you see a red bar, almost certainly stop. And if you think that there's a reason why you should import it still, go ahead and call support and have them talk you through it. There are certain situations where you may want to import, where you see a red bar. Basically, if part of the field was planted with one planter, and that data is already in the system, and then the rest of the field was planted with another planter, and so it's trying to import data into the same field, but there's no overlap between the two planters, that's a situation where it might be okay to import your planting data. But basically, anytime you see a red bar, either say no, don't import that data because it's going to cause problems. They're going to be very difficult to fix. Or if you think you should be importing, if you think it makes sense, please just call our support line before you import it, just to make sure that they can help troubleshoot before you import and potentially cause some difficult problems for yourself. With that said, I think the last thing here is just what's next. So Data Inbox is a very simple tool that's going to allow you to get all your data in one place where you can actually start using it in your daily decision making. So what you want to do is find and zip up all the historical data that you can that's in a format that can go into our system. So get it off your computer, get it off your thumb drives, get it off your monitors, wherever it is, zip it up and import it via Data Inbox. There's a number of different how-to documents that are one-pagers on how to move data out of Apex, how to move data out of a Pro 700, how to move data out of SMS. You know, whatever system, all those supported systems, we have how-to documents on each of these. And so if you need or want just a little one-page instruction on how to do this, give our support line a call at 888-924-7475, and they can get you the proper document to help you as you start moving data. And also, if you have really any questions about anything, support is always a good number to call. They are fantastic people. They are in the St. Louis office. They work, depending on time of year, anywhere from about 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time. You will get a live person on the phone that will be able to help you with your questions. So I highly encourage calling support. Really, anytime something may not make sense, or you need some clarification, or you're unsure of something, go ahead and do that. And then lastly, I'm Jeff at Climate. I've been at the company for a really long time, so I have a nice, simple email address. And if you have any of that data that you want to share, I showed that we're looking to expand our Data Inbox capability to cover some of those other systems. If you have data in any of those systems that you want to share, send me a note, and we'll try and figure out how to get that data from you so that we can use it for testing and hopefully be able to support all those systems from a Data Inbox perspective sooner rather than later. That's everything I have for today, so I want to thank you again for taking the time to attend today's webinar. Hope this was helpful in clarifying how to use Data Inbox and some of the power that you're going to get going forward. And if you would like to attend webinars on any other topics, such as how to use the data once it's in Data Inbox, or how to set your planter up for planting when using Climate FieldView Drive, or how to use really any functionality in the climate system, we do fairly regular webinars, and those can be accessed at www.climate.com/webinars. So thanks again for attending today, and we look forward to working with you this season. Thanks.